Hi everyone, my name's Autumn. I'm a first-time mom to a little boy named Michael. I gave birth to him in June, so amidst this whole COVID-19 pandemic, I also am going to share with you like my experience with, giving birth during the pandemic, because I know a lot of new moms are really nervous about that. So if I can ease any anxieties by giving my story, that's what I hope to do. So I was due on June 19th was my due date. I didn't end up having him until the 21st, which was Father's Day this year, so that was very special for my husband. I had him 2 days after his due date, but I went into labor on his due date. I labored in total for 52 hours. First time ever giving birth, of course, so you don't know what to expect as it is. And then there's this added layer of anxiety because of the pandemic. So you just have no idea how this is going to go, and it's very nerve-wracking. What happened for me, the first signs that I was going into labor were on the morning of June 19th. Like I said, my due date, I had what's called the bloody show. I mean, this is TMI. If you clicked on this, you know that I'm going to talk about all things birth. So can be a little graphic at times, but so I had the bloody show at 7 a.m. It was right after my husband had gotten to work, so I called him and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that everything's beginning, like I got my bloody show. So I was kind of curious, like, am I gonna have this baby on his due date? That would be really crazy because not many babies are born on their exact due date. I had my bloody show, and then after that I began to lose pieces of my mucus plug throughout the entire day. So it would come in kind of like big blobs, once again, TMI. But that's kind of what the mucus plug looks like. That's what they'll describe it to you as, is kind of like big, like booger-like pieces of mucus. So that was shedding throughout the day, and about noontime that day on June 19th, I started getting contractions, and they definitely felt different from the Braxton Hicks contractions that I had my entire third trimester. They were definitely more intense, but they were still infrequent. So I knew, okay, he's not coming anytime soon, but this is the beginning of it, because they definitely felt different. So I had contractions all day. They were infrequent. They were, I'd say, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes apart. While my husband was at work, I spent the day with my mom, and we went on a walk. We tried to get things going. We kept track of my contractions, and yeah, it didn't seem like it was quite progressing yet, but I was going through that for the entire day. And then I'd say around dinner time that night, I started getting them really painful, coming closer together. They were probably 7 to 10 minutes apart at this point. And by 11 o'clock, I'd say they were pretty bad. I was crying. My husband was trying to comfort me. We were trying to do our comfort measures, comfort techniques that we had learned about in our birthing class. So, I had the yoga ball, I had the essential oils, the meditation music, like I was trying it all. But yeah, the pain was very intense. There really is nothing like labor pain. You can't prepare yourself for it. I tried to go to sleep. I could not sleep. My husband slept a little bit. I was glad that he was getting sleep, because we could have had our baby at any moment. Or I guess any hour. So we wanted to make sure that he got plenty of rest. I kind of just laid there and just relaxed as well as I could, doing the deep breathing and all of that. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I called the hospital. We were like 5 to 7 minutes apart at this point. And they told me to call when they were like 5 minutes apart, basically. And they said, okay, well, you can come in and we can check you out if you'd like, just to see where you're at. But until they're very consistently 5 minutes apart exactly, then we don't recommend that you come in because of COVID. I was very scared. I wanted to go in. I wanted to get checked because I had no idea how quickly this baby was going to come, and I'd never done this before. So I told them, I was like, you know what? I know they're not consistently 5 minutes apart, but they're close enough and I'm in enough pain where I would like to be checked to see where I'm at, dilation wise. So they were like, okay, you can come on in. So my husband and I packed everything up, got all our hospital bags together. We actually had a couple things already set in the car, earlier that evening because we figured it would be happening at any point. So we headed to the hospital. Thankfully, my hospital is only 10 minutes from my place, so it was not bad of a drive, but I was in so much pain the entire time. They checked us in and they monitored the baby, saw how he was doing, and checked my vitals and everything. And then the doctor came in and checked my cervix to see how dilated I was. And come to find out, I was only 2 centimeters dilated. In labor, you're supposed to be 10 centimeters before you can begin pushing. And, you know, the dilation process can happen very slowly. So you could be at 2 centimeters for like days or weeks. But with the way my contractions were, I knew that he was coming soon. Before that, like at 38 weeks pregnant, I had gotten a cervical check and I was 1 centimeter, so I hadn't really progressed much in those couple weeks. But anyway, so I got checked, only 2 centimeters. I was pretty discouraged because I was in so much pain and I was so exhausted that I did not understand how I still had that long to go. So they sent me home. They didn't want to admit me, even though I was in so much pain, because they like to admit you once you get to about 4 centimeters. So they gave me some Epidural before I went home so that I could sleep. Didn't happen. We got home and I was in so much pain all night. It got worse and worse and worse. And I got no sleep. Kind of labored all night at home, back in bed again, tried to sleep, couldn't do that. I was up and around, walking around my home just all night because I couldn't get any rest. 5 or 6 a.m. I started having the most excruciating contractions. Like it was like they bumped up like tenfold. They got so much worse. And I actually started experiencing what they call back labor. So I felt the contractions like in my back only, and it was so painful. It was way worse than the regular contractions that you feel through the front. It was like somebody was friggin' stepping on my back like the entire time, like heavy stomping on my back. It was the worst. So at this point, I was telling my husband, I was like, I can't do this anymore. We have to go into the hospital again. And he was trying to reason with me like, hey, Autumn, you know, just a few hours ago when we left the hospital, they said you're only 2 centimeters, so we should wait it out. And so I was like, okay, I'll wait it out. And I tried, you know, using all of my comfort techniques again. And I made it until about 10 a.m. My contractions were 3 to 5 minutes apart, very consistently for about an hour, maybe longer. And we were like, okay, time to go. So we got in the car, went back to the hospital. I was put into one of the rooms for in labor and delivery, and I wasn't technically admitted yet. They still needed to check my cervix and see how I was, how far along I was. And at this point, I was like screaming bloody murder, so much pain. The contractions were horrible. I was like, I'm ready for the epidural. Like, even though I was really hoping I wouldn't need it, I was not expecting the type of pain that I experienced. So they checked me and they said, oh, you're only at 3 centimeters. And I started bawling my eyes out. My husband was trying to comfort me. Like, I was so upset. They wanted to send me back home. They said, you know, like, we really shouldn't admit you until you're at least 4 centimeters. With COVID and everything, we don't want to keep you here longer than you need to be. And that just frustrated me because I was like, I'm already here. Like, I am in so much pain. I just want to lay in this bed and have this baby in the next day. Like, I don't I don't want to go back home. I've already labored at home for so long. What they did was they reasoned with me. They were like, well, you know what? You're clearly very exhausted and you're not going to get any sleep if we send you home. So we're going to give you this shot in your butt cheek if you'd like. Obviously, they gave me the option. They didn't make me do anything. They said it was, I don't know what exactly was in it, but it had morphine in it. I've never had like a drug like that, so I was a little bit nervous about it, but they said it would knock me out, like I'd be able to get rest that I desperately needed. So I agreed. They gave me the shot in my butt, and the feeling was so strange. I felt like tingles all the way from my feet up to my head, and then I was just out. And I woke up and it was dark outside. So I had slept, I think, about 6 hours. When I woke up, I was in, once again, right back at it with that excruciating pain from the contractions, the back labor, all of that. We called the nurse into the room. I told her, okay, I'm awake. Like, can you guys check me, see what's going on? So they sent a doctor in. The doctor checked me and said, okay, well, you're about 3.5 to 4 centimeters. So, you know, you're in a lot of pain. We're just going to admit you. So you're here now. You're going to have your baby. And I was like, okay, thank you. Now I don't have to be anxious about being sent home and doing this whole thing all over again. And I mean, not to mention, like, it was the weekend. I don't know if any of you have had babies on the weekend. It's kind of frustrating because, like, the usual staff at your OB's office is not in, so they connect you with like an outside line, and then they try to connect you to the hospital, and it's just this long process that I did not want to go through again. I was like, I'm here, let's do this. So thankfully I was dilated enough where they admitted me, and so I was finally in my room, you know, trying to work through it. I was like, okay, we're in this, like, we're getting to be almost halfway there. Finally, I'd say this was around 10 p.m. So a few hours later after I had woken up, they called the anesthesiologist in because I was like, I need this epidural right now. I don't know how much longer I can handle this. The doctor checked me again. I was 5 centimeters at this point. So I was like, okay, you know what? I've made it this far, all natural. I can't take it anymore. Props to you ladies that can do it without any drugs. It'd be so cool to do that one day with one of my future babies, but oh my gosh, that first one, I could not even handle it. And honestly, I think a lot of like the stress and anxiety about like giving birth during COVID, like added on to that and made me like feel a little bit helpless. Like I didn't feel as strong as I wanted to when I was in labor, which is something that makes me a little bit sad, like looking back on, because I felt very like anxious and I didn't feel like powerful. I felt very powerless. So hopefully in the future I can go into birth with a lot more of a confident attitude. I'm really hoping I can do that someday. But anyway, so they gave me the epidural. That process was not as bad as I was expecting it to be. I've seen videos before where the process of the epidural and the huge needle that they stick in your spine, and I was a little bit nervous about that, but with the pain I was experiencing from contractions, I did not care. I was like, I don't care if this needle hurts. Like, if it's gonna give me relief, do it. And so they did it. I honestly barely felt anything because my contractions were so bad and they were in my back. So I was already feeling a lot of pain and pressure back there anyway. And it just basically felt like a like a little sting, like a little pinch bee sting type thing. So it really was not bad. If you're worried about getting the epidural, don't be. It's such a godsend, and it takes 2 seconds. It's really not that bad. After I got the epidural, I was able to finally get some rest. I slept on and off throughout the whole night. There were points where my contractions got really intense again, and I would wake up out of my sleep, and then I'd press the button because they had the epidural. It was like hooked up to like an IV thing, so you press the button and it administers more to you, more medicine to you. So every time I would wake up in pain, I would just press that again. And I think it let you do it like every 20 minutes, which was nice. My husband was able to get sleep because I was resting and I didn't really need him as my support. I was fine in bed with the epidural. It was helping me a lot. They basically checked me like every couple hours through the night. Around 8 centimeters, my water broke on its own. So that's another thing. A lot of women think that your water is supposed to break like right before you go into labor or early in the process. That's not always the case. After it broke, things went very quickly. So it only took me about 1 to 2 hours after my water broke for me to feel the urge to push. My contractions were getting very bad very quickly. Even the epidural wasn't really helping anymore with the intensity of these contractions. So finally, I got to this point where I screamed at the nurse. I feel kind of bad about it, but I needed the doctor. I was like, I need you to get the doctor in right now. I feel like I'm going to push. The intensity of that like primal urge to push when you're having your child, I didn't know how intense that feeling would be. Like, I can't control this. Like, my body wants to push. I need a doctor in here so that I don't deliver this baby without a doctor. The doctor came in and checked me, and amidst all this, I'm having contractions like every minute, maybe even closer. It was so intense. She checked me and goes, "Yep, you're 10 centimeters. I can feel his head. Let's push." I was like, yes, thank God. I started pushing. The pushing was not that bad, in my opinion. I felt that was probably the one time during my labor where I felt really empowered and in control, was when I was pushing. I was still able to feel everything, even with the epidural. I know some women don't. I don't know if it just depends on how the epidural affects your body. But for me, I could still feel all the pushes, all the contractions. It was just like dimmed down a little bit so that the pain wasn't quite as intense. But I still felt everything, which was great because I could feel when my body needed to push, how hard I was pushing, if I was doing anything to make progress. I could feel all of it. So I felt very in control and very empowered. I will tell you, the crowning is the most painful. It's probably right on par with contractions for me. In my opinion, the crowning was very painful. I could feel his head like halfway out of me, and the doctor was like, "You've got this, like his head is almost out all the way." And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I was screaming, crying. It hurt so bad. I was like, I can't do this. And she was like, I promise you, you can do this. Like, you were made for this. And that just gave me the motivation. I did one more push and his head was out. And then one more after that, his shoulders and everything else. And it was really just a couple pushes once his head was through to get him out. At that point, you just feel instant relief. Proud of yourself, so happy to meet your baby. He was born at 9:44 a.m. on the 21st of June, 2020, amidst the craziness of the pandemic. Nothing can really prepare you for your first birth, because you really don't know what to expect. You can listen to all the stories and all the advice from anybody, but when it comes down to it, your experience is your own, and no one else is going to have the same experience as you. I ended up with a 2nd-degree tear, so that's not the worst kind of vaginal tear that you can get, but it is pretty painful. I got some stitches. As of right now, I am 3 months postpartum, so my little boy is 3 months old, and I'm just now starting to feel like my stitches are completely healed. I did have a couple complications with them, so anyway, that's for another video. I'll make another video all about postpartum care, all of that, because I'm pretty passionate about that too, and sharing that with other women so that, you know, we all know what to expect. We're all in this together. Too many people don't give you the info that you need about how to prepare. Giving birth during COVID, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. Once I got to the hospital and was admitted, everything was basically as normal as I would expect. It didn't feel like there was a pandemic happening. My husband was required to wear a mask the entire time we were there. just when there were other people in the room. Like when it was just me and him, he didn't have to wear the mask, so that was good. And my hospital's policy was that the laboring woman would wear the mask also whenever anybody was in the room. But I gotta tell you, to be honest, I didn't wear mine much while I was there because it was the last thing on my mind. It really was. Like, I totally forgot I was in a pandemic. I totally forgot that I should be masking up. I was just so focused on my pain and breathing and all of that. And not once did a single doctor or nurse tell me to put my mask on. So that was just my experience. Your hospital may be different. I didn't have a mask on when I was pushing. No, it felt completely normal. Like, I once again forgot that COVID was going on. I was only allowed one visitor, so that visitor was my husband. He was my support person, so they didn't let you have anybody like come in to see the baby afterward or anything like that. It was just the laboring person and their support person. So just one visitor allowed the entire time. And we were at the hospital for, I think, 2 nights. Yeah, 2 nights, 3 days. They did do the COVID test on me. They only did it on me. They didn't do it on my husband. So that was another part of their like COVID policies and procedures in labor and delivery, was only the laboring person was COVID tested. It was a quick swab up the nose. It went in really deep. It bothered me. It didn't feel great, but I mean, I was experiencing so much other pain like before I gave birth that it was nothing compared to the whole experience. So don't worry about that. If you're nervous about the COVID test, I promise it's very quick. It makes your eye kind of water a little bit. And it's just more uncomfortable than anything. It doesn't really hurt. Also, before we went into the hospital, like when we were in the waiting area, like out in the front of the building, a nurse would come in and take your temperature and your support person's temperature and just screen you for COVID symptoms, just ask you if you're experiencing any of those symptoms before letting you in. And that was pretty much it. That was their policies and procedures for COVID. I know that it's different in every state, so your state may have different things going on. So definitely talk to your OB or talk to the hospital before you deliver. That way you're just prepared for everything that's going to happen, because I mean, with this pandemic going on, who knows when it's going to end? And this is just the new way of life, unfortunately. Everybody's extra precautious, and the hospitals are going to be super precautious too. So definitely consider that if you're going to be delivering during all of this, and kind of write that into your birth plan so that you can be mentally prepared for anything that may come your way. So that was my birth story, my experience as a first-time mom, giving birth for the first time in the middle of all this craziness. And even though it wasn't what I expected, I still wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe. I would love for you to keep watching my videos. I'm going to keep putting out more content about motherhood, all things babies. So stay tuned, and hopefully I'll do some vlogs too so that you can see my little boy. Thank you guys. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.